Welcome to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. If someone in your life has BPD, you know how difficult it can be, and you need to learn how to heal from those toxic relationships. And that's where this show comes in. Expert education, expert knowledge, expert insight, and delivered with compassion and empathy. With your host, counselor and trauma recovery coach, AJ Mahari. To purchase and book sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. Now your host, AJ Mahari.
A couple things before we start this episode. I have a website for this podcast, and it's at survivingbpdrelationshipbreakup.com. Interactive website. It's a website is its own feed for the podcast and also for my YouTube channel. So if you'd like to get a lot of the videos that aren't in this podcast, you'd like to check those out, you can do that at survivingbpdrelationshipbreakup.com. I would just like to encourage you to please leave a 5-star rating for this podcast if you find it helpful, to help this podcast keep growing and keep reaching more and more people who could benefit from this content. Exist. So it's a false equivalency, it's cognitive distortions, and it's a lot of pain this person is in. So I'm going to unpack this now without saying more about this, but please remember, if you don't believe in God, you might still find this helpful because you can insert whatever you feel. Like I just said, whatever you feel you might have lost, or think about that every time I'm mentioning what this man is specifically talking about that might not apply to you. But the rest of it may apply to you because it applies to more people than not who've been with somebody with BPD, and how much you lose yourself in these relationships because you had a bit of a lost self with codependency in the first place, but might not have known that. And then it gets exceedingly worse when you've been in a BPD relationship and now having gone through iterations or an iteration or a breakup or ghosting, discard, whether you've recycled the relationship or not. So in that preamble, just wanted to put that in there because not everybody wants to hear about God one way or the other. But I thought that this was a very important message to give, and so I hope that it can help people outside of the construct within the lesson that the commenter thinks he's learning, that I would suggest, wow, he could use a lot of counseling help with to really kind of understand at a much deeper level his lostness of his lost self, and a lot of false equivalency, and kind of turning his anger and pain to the wrong source, so to speak. So this commenter was against abortion and had faith in God and is now begging his BPD partner or ex to get an abortion and blames ostensibly God for that. Like, you see how in this really extreme example that so many people with codependency don't take their own personal responsibility? This is a matter for this commenter to take personal responsibility for. Am I going to judge or blame him that now he wants his BPD person or ex to have an abortion? Well, not really, because of the dire circumstances within which this is occurring. However, let this be a lesson to all men out there, that when these women are hyposexual and so attractive, you better be thinking about what could come about when you're enjoying yourself, right? Because it's all about personal responsibility. And you might not know in the beginning or for a while that you can't trust this female partner of yours when she says she's on the pill or she's got it covered at all. Because is it known that many women with BPD are just going to use a man to be able to have, get pregnant, to have a child, to unfortunately screw it up and to maybe create the next borderline? Yeah, unfortunately, not all people, not all women with BPD, but all too common. Where is this man's personal responsibility in all of this? His part is all I'm saying. So I've had a lot of comments on the YouTube channel over the last 16 years, and I'm going to try to make it so people can comment. I think you can comment on this podcast at survivingbpdrelationshipbreakup.com. I want to check that out. Subscribe over there. If you're on the podcast, if you have comments you want to make, questions you have, or if you want to share anything. This commenter left a comment on the video I did recently. BPD awareness can't save relationships. This is one of the most saddest comments. I mean that like I'm not, using different vernacular for the meaning of the word sad. I mean that really with empathy. I hope that the commenter or anybody that could relate to this will definitely seek help to be able to reclaim something that, as this commenter is going to talk about, was really his prior to what happened in the relationship. So ask yourself, whether you're feeling really hateful towards your ex right now, really angry, more so really hurt, confused, or maybe all of the above. Are you letting that compromise something that is incredibly central to who you are? And that could be many different things. But in this case, it's somebody's previous belief in God and faith in God. And I am a Christian, not a fundamentalist. But so I'm here to talk about this. It really touches me, and I feel a lot for this commenter because they really need to find their way back to the faith that they had. And I'm not here to preach at anybody. So the commenter said, I'm learning the lesson big time that BPD awareness can't save relationships. I think is what they're talking about, as the title of the video was stated, or as was the title of the video. Commenter continues, I'm kind of stuck because she already got scared that I'm going to leave and tricked me into having a baby. Well, and I just want to say men can be somewhat tricked into having a baby because they can try to reassure you, lie to you that they're using different methods of birth control or a method of birth control, et cetera, and they can lie to you about that. And in that way, they can trap you into having a baby. But the other point I want to gently say is you can't put 100% responsibility on that borderline woman for that because like maybe 90% even, but not 100. Why? Because whenever a man has sex with a woman that age of childbearing age and possibility, you have to know that, and not all birth control is 100%. Yes, the woman could be lying, but that when you undertake that activity, you're taking a risk. And many people don't understand just how costly that risk can end up being when when the woman with BPD gets pregnant, and how children come into these situations. And, they're going to come out of these toxic relationship situations at minimum with codependency or CPTSD, and a maximum with a cluster B personality disorder. And so the commenter continues, I'm trying to be a good father and man, so I tried to get more familiar with BPD for the sake of my family, but she's a nightmare. And, I hear you on that, commenter, and I'm sure a lot of men can relate to you. You try to understand it. I've had clients, male clients specifically, say to me, oh, well, like I didn't know what was going on. And then I found out it had a name, borderline personality disorder. And then I thought, well, maybe we're good. It has a name. It's got a definition. We can do something about this. Of course, the more you find out about BPD, the more you find out that's very unlikely, unfortunately. And the commenter said, it's never ending. I see comments where people say they miss their BPDX and they're still in love, etc., and I honestly don't know how that's possible. Well, I hear you on that too, commenter. Let me just say, a lot of people believe they're in love with a BPDX, and it's not exactly what it is, but it's certainly what they feel and believe it is. And if it is sort of that, along with other things, it's very toxic and unhealthy to be in love with somebody that has treated you extremely poorly, to say the least. Could be a nightmare, like this commenter is mentioning. And so the commenter continues, crazy sex is nowhere near enough for me to miss someone who's completely out of control. Well said, commenter. If this helps anyone out there, I'll leave with this. And this is the part why I'm doing this response to this commenter. Not anything he said so far, but starting now. And he's trying to help anyone else out there So he says, I'll leave you with this. I was completely religious until I met a girl with BPD. In literally 1 year's time, I firmly believe that God can't exist because those people do. I was completely against abortion, and now I'm begging for her to get one. I'm currently working on accepting that my relationship with God has been a farce. There's no way I deserve this, and if God exists and he thinks I do deserve this, F him. Wow. Wow, I feel for you, commenter. You've lost yourself. You've lost your way. You're angry. You're hurting a lot. I have to gently insert here, and you have some responsibility in this too. And so let's go back to where the commenter said, I was completely religious until I met a girl with BPD. In literally 1 year's time, I firmly believe that God can exist because these people do. Commenter, and to anyone that might relate, I just want to say, this breaks my heart for you because this is you losing you and losing what you value. And when it comes to faith and faith in God, that's not something we want any human being to take away from us. So most people don't anyways. And it seems rather black and white, commenter, but you said you were completely religious till you met this person with BPD. And in 1 year's time, you firmly now believe that God can't exist because people with BPD do. That is an extreme sounding like emotional and very painful place you're coming from with that. It's an extreme logical fallacy, though, because one thing can't affect or equate with the other. I believe God exists, and there might be people listening to this just, I don't know why, but they might if they don't even believe in God, which is fine because not everybody does. I mean, I'm not here to pass any judgment on that. You were religious and you believed in God, and now a year later, you firmly believe, you said, that God can exist. Well, commenter, I think that's probably a cognitive distortion based on pain and a whole bunch that you've been through here. And you're probably not still doing very well. I don't know where you're at with this now. But the fact that people with BPD exist can't cancel out the existence of the Almighty God. If one is a Christian, just can't, just can't. So what are you doing to yourself? How can you adopt a narrative like that? And believe me, understand a lot of people when they're abused and when they're hurt, they totally do kind of make this false equivalency that God couldn't possibly exist because these people do. You must have been wrong about God, you're probably thinking, because, well, now look what happened. Commenter, with a really gentle compassion, I say to you, this is you, I think, having lost yourself, and that I hope you'll revisit this, like maybe in therapy. And also that this is based on your pain and experience. And, if you don't care about God anymore and you're comfortable where you're at, then ignore this. But I don't think that's usually the case for a lot of people who, after these relationships, have lost so much of themselves, their core values, what they did believe in. And then maybe you're getting lost in a way and throwing God asunder in a way that if you truly believed in God, I have no reason to doubt what you say, then it can't just be done and over for you. At least I would hope not. Might not be in your best interest either. And you said you were completely against abortion. Well, you know, that's a stance that many people who are Christian take, but not all. So there are a lot of people who are Christian and really believe in God and are against abortion. So I don't think it's a one size fits all proposition. And that's not me making a statement of anything that I believe one way or the other. So the commenter was completely against abortion and now is begging her to get one. But commenter, don't you understand that given what you're going through, given that she has borderline personality disorder, I'm going to assume untreated. You said, she's a nightmare. I hear you. Many people with BPD, unfortunately, are nightmares relationally. So the fact that you're now begging her to get one, I hope, commenter, you'll just think about this, because I think that God would not be holding this against you. You're in the human realm, you've been really hurt, and abortion is such a tricky issue, but I would say in this circumstance, I think a lot of men would feel like you do. They would want the woman to have an abortion because they don't want to see the child come into this world and then further tether you to this person and the impossibility and the damage that will likely be done to any child that she bears as an untreated person with BPD. So I don't know. I can't speak for God, but I think there's something maybe that you're not understanding about the gracious depth of God's love and understanding to the circumstances of people in humanity that are very real and very complex. And you said, I'm currently working on accepting that my relationship with God has been a farce. Well, commenter, I just hope you'll seek some help. Maybe therapy, maybe pastoral help, a minister, because I really think you're probably in a lot of pain. I don't know where you're at, but you're definitely black and white thinking. So you're currently working on accepting that my relationship with God has been a farce. Because commenter, I would suggest to you that that might be putting it all in the wrong place because it sounds like, respectfully, I say that your relationship with the BPD X was a farce.